Hey everybody, this is Matt. How are you guys doing? This is going to be a little bit of a rambly video, a talky video. Not so much as business, but just talking to you guys and seeing where you guys are at. And I guess the purpose of this video is not really much of one, except for maybe to kind of just give you a damage report for the mid-year. It's July 1st here, which means, like, to me that means that the first half of 2016 is over. And so I kind of give a little bit of thoughts and reflection to what happened over the last 6 months, and kind of think about where I want to go in the next 6 months. The reason why I think that is significant is because during the first half of this year, or actually in January, I was actually thinking about where my music and where I wanted to go with it, and whether or not I was satisfied what I had done in 2015. And I found myself not really pleased or satisfied, I guess, with the quality of the music that I was putting out. It wasn't bad, but I don't think it lived up to what I had in my head as far as like the quality of music. Some of it was good. I think the industrial side of things and the adding of, like, trap and future bass genres helped to kind of diversify my music all throughout the last year. But I found myself going through a bunch of familiar patterns. And from my perception, I honestly believe that I was getting into, like, predictable habits with what I would do with my productions, the arrangement of my music. And I feel like that it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. So I took a look at 2016, and I went through and kind of decided that I wanted to depart from what I was doing in 2015. From 2012 to 2015, I guess the goal was to produce as much music as possible, and the diversity would kind of sustain that, right? I would produce like rock tracks and then immediately go to dubstep, and then orchestra, and then go off into La La Land with like a bunch of like ethnic stuff, like Chinese instruments. And to a degree, I still do that, but I feel like my pacing for this year has been a lot slower than in the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, I was trying to produce, like, I guess about 180 tracks per year, and some of it was good, but I realized that the production schedule is kind of insane when you think about it. To come up with that much music, you have to basically maybe make 5 or 6 tracks. I would say 4 or 5 tracks per week without any break, and going at that breakneck speed maybe helps for like the YouTube scheduling thing. Like, I know gamers in YouTuber land, they tend to release videos twice a day. Music production, probably not so much, because it is an art form. You're not so much playing a game, but you're making something from scratch. And in order to keep that schedule, I think, quite honestly, and I know you guys like my music and everything like that, but I feel like my music, I want to drive it to the next level, right? I wanted to make it like on par with like the professionals, like for instance, my orchestra music. I want to have my orchestra music be on par with what you would hear in a movie theater, right? As the soundtrack to a film. I want to be able to have that pass off as like something that you could actually go along with in the theater, or the club, or a concert, or even high definition, what the professionals do. And so I'm still producing quite a bit of music, but it's kind of slowed down. one of the things that I've stopped doing. I was doing for a while, remastering my older tracks, if you remember, from late 2014 to the end of 2015. And in 2016, I stopped that. And one of the reasons is that even with the remastered tracks that I was doing, I found myself going back and looking at the remastered tracks and saying to myself, well, if I could only do this stuff differently now, because sometimes when I remastered those tracks, I would, leave it alone, and then I would learn new stuff, and I would be saying to myself, well, what if I just apply the lessons that I learn now to the remastered tracks? They would sound so much better. But I feel like now that's the wrong way to go, because that's almost like, George Lucas in the Star Wars original series, or the original trilogy of movies, where he keeps changing the movies to try and make them better, and they end up being worse and worse and worse. There's a lot of you guys have actually liked the remasters, but at the same level, there are some of you guys that did not like the changes, and that's understandable, because a lot of you guys cling to the originals, and the changes made to those originals are not necessarily better. And so, what I've gone on, what I've basically adopted for 2016, is the notion that I should probably not change the older tracks anymore, and basically apply the lessons that I've learned by, producing them, and learning the new production techniques into new tracks. Like, I'm putting all my effort into like totally new tracks instead, and that makes for kind of a slower schedule. It's but I think it's more satisfying. It it doesn't it doesn't use the older material as a crutch. That's what it does. It forces me to come up with totally new stuff without having to rely on stuff that I've already done. And I think that's a healthy thing. And maybe one of the wake up calls was my remix of I'm Everywhere. I did actually remaster I'm Everywhere, and then I offered those tracks to you guys to remix, and then I did my own remix. And that remix of I Am Everywhere, which is something that a very popular YouTuber, Jacksepticeye, uses for his outro. There's also several other people that use it, but I want to make sure that you guys know that everybody is still free to use that track, even though one of the most popular YouTubers actually uses it. The freedom to use that track is still there, and I want you guys to be free to basically use that track without any, pressure or any like stigma of somebody saying, "Hey, you stole that from so and so." Nobody stole the track from anybody. The original source is still me, and if you want to use I'm Everywhere for one reason or another, apart for one reason or another, that's fine with me. It's basically that's the nature of royalty-free music. You have the freedom to use it with no consequence for me. I won't do anything, because that's my gift to you guys as a royalty-free music producer. So, anyways, what was I talking about? Um, yeah. So, anyways, I remixed I'm Everywhere, and I think that was the last death nail of doing remixes or remasters, of remastering old tracks. And when I started out with 2016, I took a look at what I was doing, and mainly at the beginning of 2015. I had basically sat down and I wanted to do the YouTube thing, which is basically keep a schedule of what I was producing, right? Because it's even in the YouTube playbook today that you've got to basically come up with consistent content, consistent in schedule, and also consistent in actual content. And the problem with doing a spread of genres is that you can't there is there's not really a consistency that you can do if you're all over the place on the genre spectrum. And so my answer to that was to attempt to do an electronic dance music, for instance, like every week, and not just any genres of electronic dance music, but I would do one dubstep um, one weekend and one electro track another week, and then the next week I would do drum and bass, and then the final week would be glitch hop. Not necessarily in that order, but I felt like I had to do those four genres, like specifically, in order to be able to keep the consistency of electronic dance music in my repertoire. Um, and I came out of that cycle, and I wasn't able to fully keep that schedule, of course, but I came out of that cycle really exhausted. Like I found myself really exhausted, like musically, in the beginning of 2016, and I had this unwritten tradition that at the beginning of the year I would come up with an electro track, and I knew that I had to change because in 2016, instead of electro, I came out with a breakbeats, which surprisingly enough, you guys liked. I Breakbeats is not really one of my most popular genres, but apparently you guys liked it a lot. And I took it kind of as a sign that maybe I didn't have to stick to those four genres, and that I could basically extend my repertoire to different genres. And really, I've been meaning to do some other things. Like uh, I've done I've done a couple trance songs, which I plan on doing more. I want to go more into that direction, doing trance. Obviously, I'm keeping up with trap and future bass a little bit. Um, but I mean, there's other things that I probably should do. I've done a couple new disco songs as well. I've gone back to down tempo, just basically a lot of the different genres that I was doing before I actually learned how to do dubstep in 2012. I was mainly into down tempo, and I'm still into getting. I'm still going forth and producing some of these genres still, but I feel like my approach to those genres have also changed, and I'm more into taking my time and making these songs sound great instead of trying to pump them out every week, if that makes sense. The problem with uh, driving an insane schedule of music production is that you can't really learn anything new because you're always under the pressure of putting notes down and basically making a song and coming up with something new. And you get yourself into a trap where you find yourself into predictable patterns that's basically somebody can basically predict if you do them enough. And so, and I don't know if you guys have heard this stuff, but I know myself, I've like picked up on those patterns that I've like fallen into in the last half of 2015. Um, and also, like I said, like there's things you can't really learn as much. My goal, one of my goals for 2016 was to basically learn more about music production and try and drive home, like my own instruments and my own sound, and um, that has resulted in is kind of like a slower production cycle. But I feel like the quality of music has been driven up tremendously, and I feel like looking at the ratings of my songs, I feel like I've kind of like I feel like I'm going more for quality than quantity. So hopefully, if you guys want to like leave some like feedback and everything like that, just let me know. I'm all ears. I'm all ears for like feedback, and I still am an artist, and I go my direction, and I do take sometimes requests, and so other times I just do what's in my heart and stuff like that. But um, don't feel that I take criticism, actual criticism, like personally, because I don't. I actually listen to you guys, and I kind of consider what I want to do based off of what you guys say that you want to see in my music. And the other thing is that I felt like I needed to change my equipment a little bit. Um, I was not really working with the top of the line stuff up until about 2 months ago, I would say. I was working with basically a mid-tier laptop. It was like an i5 processor with about 6 gigabytes of RAM. For you guys technical minded, that's not really a gaming PC at all. And I was basically all the time that I was working with this computer and the laptop before that computer, I was basically fighting against like limitations that I had, limitations of memory and processor speed, that for some of the instruments it didn't really matter, but once you got into the higher end quality stuff, um, it basically stopped my progress like wholly in terms of making better music. And for instance, in 2014, mid early 2014, I bought this thing called East West Quantum Leap Hollywood strings and Hollywood brass and Hollywood woodwinds. These are instruments that are made to sound exactly like you would hear in an orchestra or like a symphonic choir or something like that. And I also bought another instrument called Sound Iron, Mars Choir for men and Venus Choir for women. And also, those are made to be really hyper realistic versions of like choirs that you would hear in symphonic and like, choral arrangements and everything. And that was 2 years ago. The problem is that these instruments, they they take up a lot of resources on computers. And to give you an idea, when I a couple days ago I released a track called "Conjuring a New Enemy." Is a really epic trailer that was about 2 minutes long, and it had a lot of brass. It had a lot of like choral like swelling and dynamics, and it had a lot of strings going from soft to loud. And that one project, that 2 minute song, it took up about 10 gigabytes of the system RAM on my computer, which 10 gigs is more than twice the amount of memory that my previous laptop had. I would try and do something like that on my laptop and load up like a choir setting from Sound Iron, and halfway through the loading process, my computer would be so frozen up that I would have to just give up and hard reset the laptop. So that was no good, and so I had that limitation going there. And so at the beginning of this year, I'm not a rich person, right? And so basically my solution to getting a gaming rig, which essentially that's what it is. I had to get myself a gaming rig, only with the emphasis on getting a lot of memory and processing power that allowed for the processing of these high-end instruments, right? I'm able to do some gaming videos, as you can see on the screen right here, but that's kind of like a side benefit. But basically, I had to get this new setup to basically be able to play the higher instruments and get the higher quality sound. And so I basically piecemeal built this new PC to do that. It took a lot of time to get the pieces, and when I finally got the pieces, I had to put it together myself and do a lot of the programming. I have just basic Windows 10 here with no bells and whistles, and that's just fine with me. I don't really like the Microsoft Office or anything like that. And I'm using a lot of freeware on this computer as well, including Inkscape for my art and stuff like that. But the power has allowed me to explore new ideas, and I hope you guys are hearing this. And the other shoe that drops with this, though, is that I have to now learn how to control these instruments. Like, I don't have an excuse to not learn how to use these instruments. And that means learning about dynamics and a lot of the multi-timbered stuff that you can use, you have to be able to switch to the right kind of like articulation on these instruments to make them sound like they are really being played by people. And so it's a learning process. It's also a waiting process because a lot of these instruments take like a lot of time to load up into the memory from hard drives. Once again, when I'm loading up like a project like conjuring a new enemy, that project basically takes up about 10 minutes to basically load up onto the computer. And even after that loads up, you have to go through the song several times for the music software to fully recognize all the instruments. It's a long, convoluted process. I gotta say. I also switched up my DAW, which previously it was a piece of software called Cakewalk Sonar Producer, and it was a very old version of that piece of software. It was a piece of software from I think 2008, and now I am using Coco's Reaper, which is a lot cheaper, but it is so much better. And the best part about using Reaper is that I can actually recommend it to you guys as a DAW that you can start out with, because it only costs about $60 for people who don't have a business or are a part of a smaller business. I believe the piece of software is more expensive if you have a large corporation and you're making millions of dollars. But for us, Reaper is basically loads cheaper than something like Cakewalk Sonar, which their producer version probably costs about like $500 right now. And I'm really grateful. I'm actually talking on it right now to record the voice parts of this video. But it was a learning process, and I had the goal of basically replacing Cakewalk Sonar with Reaper by the end of the year. But as soon as I started producing music on this piece of software, like I did not look back. It was so much better than Cakewalk Sonar. So not only is it cheaper than Cakewalk Sonar, it is also much better than Cakewalk Sonar. And how can you can't argue with that. So I'm all for it. So if you guys want to try your own like music production software and learn how to do like produce your own music, and Reaper comes with its own suite of effects too, so you can basically play around that and see if you can like make your mixes sound professional as well. So yeah, I've got that, and basically other than that, I've been getting newer instruments. I basically upgraded my Reason software. That's the software that I usually use to produce electronic dance music. And so a lot of this is basically just learning process. I want to learn how to basically take my music to the next step. And because, even though I'm a royalty-free music producer, I really want to just consider myself a music producer who just happens to, offer my music for you guys to use in your videos. I want people to listen to my music, not just to use my music in their videos, but because they like my music. And I want to produce stuff that I'm proud of, not just stuff that is, I don't want to be the guy that produces obligatory stuff. I want to put the passion and my passions for music into my songs, and I hope you guys hear that. But anyways, that's my thoughts for music. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was a little bit different. It's a little bit more off the cuff, and hopefully I have a little bit more personality than what I usually let on. You know what I mean? I'm not really used to speaking to a microphone, so I like to have fun though sometimes too. So let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys with more music very shortly, actually. All right, have a great night.